Hi, and welcome to the To Be Read podcast, where we give honest reviews on viral books that you might see on social media and popular book review websites. This is Chris.
And Carison, and on today's episode, we will be discussing Disney High, the untold story of the rise and fall of Disney Channel's tween empire by Ashley Spencer. So cozy on in, and let's see if you should add this book to your TBR shelf. Hello, everyone, and happy 2025. Also, happy 1 year to our podcast. I got the
Oh my
notification
god.
today. It's
Oh
a
my
1 year
god,
ago.
one whole year.
I know. A year ago, we started our TikTok for our podcast, and uh, yeah, look where we are now.
Crazy.
I know. We literally had this idea, and then 2 months later, we were like, all right, let's just do it.
And then we continued to fail on doing it once a month, and we're only 7 episodes in.
But you know what? 2025, we have some good goals. We talked a little bit about it on our TikTok, but we came up with a bookish bingo. So make sure you follow us on our Instagram. I will have in the description our account to follow us on, where you can follow us along with our bookish bingo. Maybe we will, in this episode, see if we marked off any of our spots that we had. So you can, like I said, go to our Instagram and follow along with us, and also do it for yourself. See if you can cross off your bingo card that we made this year. There's some fun things on there, like our first 5-star read, because we have yet to get that. A book that has changed perspective on us. There's a whole bunch of things. Of course, we're knocking off our free space, but we have that going for us, and we are trying to do one book a month because we're both moms and we're both busy, and we're not going to set us up for failure and try to do more than one book at a time right now. So those are our two main goals for our podcast this year. So make sure you are subscribed to our channel so you don't miss an episode, and follow us on TikTok if it's still around. And Instagram, and also we do have a Facebook group, so just search the To Be Our podcast, and it's the same uh, character handle. Is that our profile picture is the same as it is on all of our social media pages, so you will find us on there, and you can get updates on there as well. So let's jump into this book. We read Disney High, The Untold Story of the Rise and Fall of Disney Channel's Tween Empire by Ashley Spencer. I'm going to do like what we always do every episode and start off by reading the synopsis and what the average rating is for Goodreads. So, Goodreads rating is 4.11 stars with 2,160 ratings. And here is the synopsis. For many kids growing up in the 2000s, there was no cultural touchstone more powerful than Disney Channel, the most watched cable channel in prime time at its peak. Today, it might be best known for introducing the world of talents like Hilary Duff, Raven-Symoné, Zac Efron, Miley Cyrus, Selena Gomez, the Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, and Zendaya. It wasn't always destined for greatness. When Disney Channel launched in 1983, it was a forgotten stepchild with the Walt Disney Company, forever in the shadow of Disney's more profitable movies and theme parks. But after letting the stars of their Mickey Mouse Clubhouse revival, among them Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera, and Ryan Gosling, slip through their fingers, Disney Channel reinvented itself as a powerhouse tween network. In the new millennium, it churned out billions of dollars in original content and triple threat stars whose careers were almost entirely controlled by the corporation. Suddenly, everyone wanted a piece of the pie, and there were constant clashes between the studio, network labels, and creatives as Disney Channel became a pressure cooker of perfection for its stars. From private feuds and on-set disasters to fanfare that swept the nation and the realities of child stardom, cultural journalist Ashley Spencer offers the inside story of the heyday of TV's House of Mouse, featuring hundreds of exclusive new interviews with former Disney executives, creatives, and celebrities to explore the highs, lows, and everything in between. I give this a 3-star. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed because I personally didn't feel like I got much insight. I did with like it talking to the executives and the crew members, but when it came to talking to the actual actors in the shows, there wasn't much new insight from them, and that's what going into it I expected was more of the celebrity interviews, and this book was heavy on the executives and the creatives and the producers and the directors interviews, which it was also good insight, but I just was a little disappointed that a lot of the interviews when it came to the celebrities were from past interviews that I have one already seen before or two have already heard about.
Yeah, I would totally agree with with exactly everything that you said. I went into it expecting so much more, a little bit of tea and like some more like behind the scenes insight from the people who experienced it and that were on screen.
Mm-hmm.
And uh I don't know, I was a little disappointed, honestly. And like, so I listened to the book on Audible, and it literally felt like it was told entirely from one person's perspective with like a little dusting of
Mm-hmm.
like other people's perspectives in it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah.
And so for me, this was like a 2.5 star. I personally would not put it on my shelf.
Mm-mm.
And I wouldn't hand it off to somebody saying, you know, there's a lot of really awesome stuff in here.
Yeah.
Like, so I read the one, I should look it up really fast, but the one from the, who played, God, Star Wars C3PO. And the book is, I believe, it's called I Am C3PO. And I listened to that, and it's actually narrated by the guy who was C3PO. And like, you got to actually hear like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was some interviews like sprinkled throughout for from other people who were there with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so much more entertaining than the entirety of this book. And this book covered a lot of ground when it came to the Tween Empire,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And especially now that they're all adults,
Mm-hmm.
I was really hoping that we would get something.
Yeah. I was even telling Lathan today, on the in the car when we were talking, um, and I was mentioning about I didn't the part where I didn't gain any really new insight, and the parts where I'm talking about is where it talked about um, Ashley Tisdale and Lucas Gabriel didn't actually like each other when filming High School Musical. I already knew that
Yeah.
because they had years ago come together on like I think Ashley's YouTube channel and sang a song together and talked about how they actually hated each other. So I already knew that. And then um, I knew about Raven Simone and her getting body shamed by Disney because
Yeah.
she is a curvy girl and they wanted her to be skinny, so they dressed her in a way where it didn't show off her curves. And I already knew that because she's talked about that
Yeah.
multiple times in interviews. And the Jonas Brothers and their purity rings, like I knew the backlash that they got, and part of it is
Yeah. And
I
Zac
grew,
Efron in the
yeah,
singing portion, all of that. We know
yeah,
all of those things.
yeah. So I was just a little frustrated that you didn't really get much new information besides like the information you did get was the drama when it came to between like the executives
Right.
within Disney, like and the pilots. that were thought of but didn't actually happen. Um, so that's what I'm talking about, where I feel like I didn't really gain a new perspective.
Yeah. It didn't change how I felt about Disney as a whole or the shows themselves. It didn't make me respect the actors more or less. It just was
Mm-hmm.
like, here's some knowledge,
Yeah,
and you may already know it.
yeah.
Like, if you didn't live in a hole and you grew up on Disney at all during this era, because all of these were around the same era,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Early 2000s. I think if I would choose
I
out of
also
the
felt like
shows.
they spent so much more time on the Lizzie McGuire stuff than they did anything else.
Yeah, well, she was kind of the starting point for them. So I makes sense. I think for me, if I'm going to pick out of the shows that they talked about, which I'm going to say real quick, the shows they gave insight on was Even Stevens, which was a very small glimpse of that. Lizzie McGuire, That's So Raven, The Sweet Life of Zach and Cody, High School Musical, Hannah Montana, Selena Gomez, and The Wizards of Waverly Place, The Jonas Brothers, and Demi Lovato with Camp Rock and Sunny with a Chance. If I would have to choose one of those shows slash movies that I learned new information from, it would have been um, Miley Cyrus with her relationship with her dad. Um, I did not know watching that show that her parents were going through divorce at the time. I thought that happened after the show ended. Um, so that was something new that I learned was all the drama that was going on within her own family, um, because that wasn't portrayed on screen at all because her dad played her dad in the show. Um, so you didn't see the drama between her own family going on, which is a good thing because as a kid you don't need to be knowing those things. Um, but the another one that kind of impacted me, which I texted you about, was I still am obsessed with High School Musical. Okay, I loved that movie. Changed my life, which is kind of dramatic to say, but when you're in middle school, going through elementary school, middle school, going through that time period, it can do that to a kid. I actually cried reading about High School Musical. And I think it wasn't because it was profound things that I was reading. It was just, it brought back the memories of falling in love with that movie and the sequels that came with it. And it made me
Yeah. Well, and the
remember,
fact that they didn't think that it was going to do very good,
yes,
and they just were like, this is over the top, like cheese alert, like anything and everything that's just like stereotypical cheesy high school, we're just throwing in there and it's going to be awful. And then come to find out that like it ended up being such a sensation
yeah,
is amazing. But
yes.
like, I don't know. It was really interesting to hear how was it Lucas or was it which actor was it that was just like, this is beneath me, and then ended up actually really falling in love with the cast and
It was Lucas. Because he was so much older than them.
yeah. And so is Ashley Tisdale, right? She was
No,
like in
she
her
was,
early 20s.
yeah, and the rest of the cast were in their late teens, but Lucas was by far the oldest. Him and Monique were the oldest too, because it talked about how they were old enough to drink, but none of the others were.
Yeah. So yeah, I found that really interesting. Oh, the one thing that I did, I mean, we're talking about High School Musical because that I think comes close to both of our hearts because
Yeah.
you fell in love with it and I fell in love with it. I think for very different reasons, but like
Mm-hmm.
also sort of the same. And I think that High School Musical actually helped you and me really connect even more so as siblings.
Yeah, it
And
did.
so I I found it really interesting to hear about how Zac Efron had a girlfriend when he first started recording, and how
Vanessa.
Vanessa ended up having like this huge crush on him, and how he was so concerned about, he kind of liked her too, but he didn't want to be disrespectful, and he also didn't want to like lose the connection that they had on camera,
Mm-hmm.
and how like they just ended up in the bathroom talking and like walked out holding hands, and I'm just like, "Ugh, what a beautiful like actual cinematic moment that like wasn't curated by publicists."
Yeah, yeah,
So I felt
yeah.
that really heartwarming, and like I don't know, anybody else could disagree with me, but I have a huge place in my heart for Zac Efron. I respect him as an actor, and I love a lot of the things that he's in, and it's not just a crush, but like I don't know. I feel like he's done some big things, um, and in my opinion, what I see as just a normal citizen that nobody knows is that he's a pretty humble dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Chris was Team Troy. I was Team Chad. So.
Yeah, it is nice that they touched on that just like a hair, where Chad like got to be in his own.
Wouldn't jump in with his.
Yeah,
And yeah, and his dad played his dad in that movie too.
yeah. And so I kind of like that they touched base on like how Disney started molding into a more diverse like cast in general.
Mm-hmm.
First with like That's So Raven being like one of the first African American like actresses to have her name in
Yeah.
like the title. That was really cool. And then like the Cheetah Girls, and hearing about like how they added in what was that girl's name?
Sabrina Bryan.
The one with the short blonde hair.
Yeah, Sabrina Bryan to play Dorinda.
Yeah, and because they thought that she was like Caucasian, come to find out that she's also Latino,
She's Spanish.
Hispanic, my bad. And so like, but like it's really cool that there was like all these different diversities that they
Yeah.
started implementing, and started like really pushing to like have that representation, and how it was kind of iconic for in Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, the
The
Asian girl
roles
to
were
not be the
reversed.
smart one.
Yeah.
And it really just like, I laughed out loud when they started talking about the Prindle scene.
That scene is. I literally saw a TikTok today. It was an interview with Brenda Song talking about how iconic that scene is. And
Yeah.
she, even today, she's like, I still to this day, because that was improv, her
Yeah.
doing that. And she's like, I still to this day believe it should still be called the Prindle. Like a gear shift? No, it should be called the Prindle. And so I remembered that when I started driving myself. I was like, oh, it's the Prindle. And I was like, no, wait, it's that's not what it's actually called. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty great. And so like those moments I really did enjoy reading about, but I don't feel like they really were just like altering,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm. It was interesting to
So,
see the drama happen between the executives and the writers and producers and stuff, um, especially with them firing certain, like, direct, was it the producer or one of the executives, someone on one of the shows, like the writer or something. There's so many different names. I'm so sorry.
yeah, and he didn't take it very well.
Yeah.
Um,
But then they brought him back for a different show to try to see if he could do any better, and he didn't. So that was interesting. I did find it interesting to learn about the drama between Hillary and her co-star when it came to Lizzie McGuire. I was so young when Lizzie McGuire started that I don't even remember
I
most
was
of,
obsessed.
yeah. I more remember, like, That's a
Lizzie
Raven.
McGuire was definitely like my, because like we're close in age. We're like
Yeah,
five
we're
years
5 years
apart.
apart.
And so like Lizzie McGuire was definitely like my childhood
Yeah.
and my age. And then like the Jonas Brothers were more yours.
Yeah, I was definitely more of high school. Once High School Musical started is when it became more. I do remember watching That's a Raven and Lizzie McGuire, but not as much as the later stuff. Um, yeah, I that was interesting to learn that her co-star was basically let go because they couldn't get along.
Yeah, I did find that really interesting.
So we didn't. I would say we were in the middle of liking or not liking it. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was definitely a solid 3 stars. Like, the nostalgia was great. I enjoyed just kind of reminiscing on like my childhood TV shows.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like that you would have liked to hear about any shows during that time frame that weren't touched on?
I think yes. I think I would have liked to hear. Wow, I can speak. I would have liked to have heard a perspective on the Disney Channel games that they did because they during like the High School Musical, Sweet Life era, and the later of the early 2000s, um, they had the stars do the Disney Channel games. And those were so cool because all the stars would come together. And it was kind of like a field day type thing. Um,
I do
I
not remember this.
it was past your time. You were not. This is when you were in high school, and I was in middle school when they did this. Um, but it was funny. Not funny, but I would have liked to heard that because you had like people who did not get along, like Miley Cyrus and um, Selena. Was it Selena? Yeah, Miley Cyrus and Selena who didn't get along, but they would have to like pretend to be friends at the Disney Channel games because they have to like look like everyone's a team and everyone loves each other within Disney Channel. So it would have been cool to have that perspective, um, and get that insight for a TV show. What about you?
Honestly, I don't. I think that I got to hear about all of the ones that I really watched. I feel like they talked more about Shia LaBeouf than they did even Stevens.
Yeah,
And so I think that I would have rather like I don't know, heard more about like Topanga and how like
with Boy Meets
both of
World.
yeah. And so I don't know, like for me I feel like either that or to circle back and there's some things that like came full circle and like even had like a reboot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would have loved to hear about like how they got the cast to come back together even just for like
Yeah, because they did Girl Meets World, which was a spinoff of Boy Meets World. Then they did Raven's Home, which was a spinoff of That's a Raven. Um, and they did High School Musical,
oh
Musical
see
the series.
yeah yeah I don't know. And I may be like crossing some of my things. I grew up watching so many different shows because that was our entertainment. And so maybe something I mentioned isn't Disney. I don't know.
No, you did.
But
Topanga's just in from Boys Meets World. She's not from Even Stevens, which is still a Disney Channel show.
it okay, so it was like that I would have loved to like hear about that and um I don't know. Those are the things that I grew up like watching.
Yeah, I wish something I wish that was highlighted a little bit more. They talked about it a little bit when it came to Demi Lovato, and a little bit when it came to Shia LaBeouf. But you see so many of these Disney Channel stars that grew up in that time period when it's talking about this whole Disney high and their struggles with drugs and alcohol. And um, I wish it would have talked about that a little bit more on how they're doing now and how it affected them and their careers now. Because Demi Lovato had a real rough time after high school, leaving Disney Channel, and she's opened up about that a lot. And
Hmm.
I feel like it could have been highlighted a little bit more. I felt like it was just a little bit glossed over. Like, the executives were like, yeah, we saw she had a problem, but we really didn't do anything to help her. And I feel like that's a problem. If you see a teenager actively struggling with that stuff and not acting themselves, and then you just kind of gloss over it. And they talked about it with Vanessa Hudgens leaked photos,
Hmm.
how they spun it to be in a different way and be like she was, you know, um, what was done to her was not okay and it needs to not happen. But then when things happened with Demi Lovato, it was just like, oh, we're cutting ties with her and she's getting help.
Yeah.
And I just, that really bothers me because in the entertainment industry, that is such a big problem. And when you're dealing with teenagers or early 20-year-olds going through that, it's kind of your responsibility to like help them if you're putting them in those environments.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I also found it really interesting that like, and I already knew this, but they did touch on it. The fact that like it is a general consensus that children who are working in the industry are required to at least have 3 hours of school a day. And
Mm-hmm.
like, it sounded like meeting those 3 hours was such a hard thing. And to me, that just blows my mind because we went to school for 8 hours a day and then had homework.
Yes.
And there were people who lived in our environment and still didn't understand and still didn't learn. And like, these kids are in the working force pulling however long days they're pulling, 3 hours off and on, not even just consecutively, of schoolwork just to jump right back on scene. And like then they're being regulated on what they're eating because they have to like meet a beauty standard that's in the industry during this time. And then on top of all of that, a lot of them got their high school diplomas early.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I feel like that is such a huge thing. Like how the heck did they do all of that?
Yeah, it's a lot. I can't imagine being a teenager in high school going through all that stuff cuz you're a working teenager while still doing school. Like that's just insane to me. It really shows how talented those kids are to be
Yeah.
able to do all of that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like crazy because like Hillary Duff and um gosh, Lu Lucas and a couple others that they talked about like literally grew up so young. The Sprouse boys grew
Yeah.
up literally like pretty much in diapers acting. So
Mhm.
like they really didn't know any different, but like still. And found it really interesting how they touched base on twins in the entertainment business and how that's just like such a hot commodity because a lot of people wanted to do essentially what the Olsen twins did,
Yeah.
where they can almost get more recording because one twin could be working while the other one's doing schoolwork and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Nuts.
Yeah. They even use twins now as singles on shows. So like Grey's Anatomy. Um, you don't watch Grey's Anatomy, so you probably don't know this, but all of Meredith's kids, except for her older daughter in the show, so her boy and then her younger daughter, they're actually played by twins, identical twins. So that's a big thing in the industry is like babies are usually played by twins now. And they even did that with the Olsen twins in Full House.
Yeah.
The twins played one character so that they could use them to film longer scenes. So
Yeah. I
that is
did
just
find it
really
really
neat.
interesting how they talked about like the transition from the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody to the Sweet Life on Deck
Mm-hmm.
and how that wasn't originally meant to be for like the Sprouse
Yeah.
kids
Yeah.
and how it just kind of moved into that because it wasn't doing well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I did find that interesting.
Yeah. I like the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody better than Sweet Life on Deck, but
I agree with that.
it's okay. I think it's because you lost like Arwen, and Arwen was so funny in the Sweet Life of Zack and Cody that losing him on the Sweet Life on Deck, and they brought in the kid who played Cody's roommate to kind of be like, I feel like the new Arwen, but it just wasn't the same.
I agree. I agree. The other, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the spin-offs, like That's So Raven, her brother had his
Cory in the
own,
House.
yeah, and that, I mean, that was funny and cute, but like I didn't want to watch it, kind
I
of
didn't
thing. Like
either.
if it was on TV, I'd watch it, but like I wouldn't be going through the guide to select it.
Yeah. I wouldn't be like, okay, mom and dad, I have a new episode at 4 p.m. on Friday of my new show. I wouldn't be like that.
Yeah.
All right, so I think overall, I probably wouldn't recommend this book if you're wanting to have some real insight
Yeah.
on
If you,
from the actor's side. If you want
I,
it from the executive side, for sure, read it. If you want it
yeah,
from the
or
actor's perspective, no.
if you haven't like actually if you haven't actually like been listening or paying attention to any of those interviews that like we had talked about because a lot of this information is out there and has been out there for years, but if you haven't
Yeah.
paid attention or read into it or even like watched any of those, I mean it might be an interesting read for you, but if I'm just speaking generically, I completely agree. I wouldn't put it on your shelf. So do you feel like the book cover did it justice?
No. It's just a plain book cover.
I wish that they would have like sprinkled in just like little trinkets or elements from each of the
Yeah.
different shows that they talked about.
Yeah, like
Like
a
for in
basketball for High School Musical and like a microphone for Hannah Montana and stuff like that.
yeah,
They could have been a little more eye catching. It's kind of boring cover, I'm not gonna lie.
yeah. Even just like images of all of the different like teen icons, tween icons
Yeah.
would have been, I think, a little bit more eye-catching as well. Did this book mark off anything on our bingo board? Definitely not a five-star read.
No. The cover, I mean, the cover makes sense, I guess. Oh, but it says cover makes 0 sense. Never mind. Um,
I mean, it made you cry, right?
I'm not good. That wasn't like a big cry. I'm gonna use the made me cry as like I was literal tears. I just had some water in my eyes. Did it give a new perspective at all?
I didn't get one,
I don't feel like it
really.
did.
I feel like it gave the same perspective I've had.
Yeah.
So I don't
Well,
think
okay.
so.
What about made you laugh? Did any parts of it make you laugh?
I mean, no.
Me either. Okay. Dang. So no, we didn't mark up any of our book bingo, but that's okay. Okay, so for February, since February has Valentine's Day in it, we are doing a romance. We actually haven't done a romance in a while, I don't think. So we're going to do a romance. And the romance we chose is The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. The cover is, I feel like this has a good interpretation of what's hopefully going to happen. Do you have any guesses?
So I've seen this book all over TikTok and even like Instagram, like Bookstagram or whatever you want to call it. And so I kind of just keep scrolling because I figured that we would probably read this at some point in time. I'm not gonna lie to you, because of the cover and because we've read um the what was that one
The
called?
soulmate
Like
equation.
the equation?
The soulmate equation.
Yeah, the soulmate equation. It's giving me those vibes.
Oh, okay.
And so I can't get that story out of my head, and I worry that I'm going to dive into this book expecting that.
Oh no.
But but like I'm also excited because that means that hopefully there's some fun little surprises in there right now.
Yeah. Definitely
I'm
has something
I'm
to do
hoping
with,
that it's good.
yeah, something scientific because it has the hypothesis in it. And hypotheses have to do with science. And it has
Yeah.
speakers in the background. And they're both wearing lab coats.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I had to project what I think this is about just based off of the cover, I'm going to assume that those two maybe start working on some kind of team for some kind of science experiment or hypothesis to find, like, I don't know, it could even just be to help others find love based off of their
Yeah.
genetics.
Yeah.
And they end up like having a little romance of their own as they're both working on this project.
Yeah.
Uh,
I feel like
but
that's a good.
he also, to me, that doesn't look like a lab coat. It looks like a button-up shirt, whereas she's in a lab coat. So I'm wondering if he is kind of the front runner of this experiment.
Ooh, interesting. Like maybe he's a billionaire or something?
Yeah, but like the picture
Oh.
makes them look both quite young,
Yeah.
and so I don't know.
It's kind of creeping me out that his eyes are open when she's kissing him. So, is this like is she kissing him and like a he's surprised moment, or does this guy kiss with his eyes open? Because by the look on his face, he looks kind of surprised that she's kissing him. So maybe they're like enemies to lovers.
Maybe.
Um, but yeah, the fact that his eyes are open kind of freaks me out.
That is so funny.
When you think about it, when you kiss your partner, your eyes are usually closed. I mean,
Uh,
mine are at least.
Not everybody.
Yeah, if you watched Matt James' season of The Bachelor, he kissed with his eyes open, and that was a big thing.
So if you're a man or a woman, I guess, whatever you are, just know that like people judge you if you kiss with your eyes open.
Yeah, and I'm one of them. All right. Well, that's all for today's video. If you have read the Disney High Untold Stories, let us know what you thought of it and if you agree with our assessment. And if you haven't read it and you wanted to read it, let us know if this swayed your opinion on wanting to read it or not. And again, make sure you're following us here on YouTube, you're subscribed to our channel, and follow us on Instagram and hopefully TikTok if it's still around, because who knows if it will be. At least in America, we don't know.
Only time will tell.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, we hope you guys are having a wonderful start to 2025 and you guys continue to have a great year. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the To Be Read podcast, where we talked about the untold story of the rise and fall of Disney Channel's tween empire, Disney High, by Ashley Spencer. Join us next time as we dive into The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood.